Last week, actually last Thursday, the state of Maine joined Colorado in attempting to subvert the election process when its Secretary of State, Shenna Bellows, barred former President Donald Trump from her state's Republican primary ballot. Now, former President Trump's legal team filed an appeal earlier today regarding Maine. They're also challenging Colorado before the Supreme Court. But what do these actions expose about the left's willingness to use lawfare to hinder a candidate they fear they cannot beat at the polls? Can our system survive these subversive tactics? Joining me now to discuss this, Jeff Clark, Senior Fellow and Director of Litigation at the Center for Renewing America. Jeff, welcome back to the program.
Well, great to be here. Tony, thanks for having me back, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. It's going to be a challenging year full of, I wouldn't say surprises, because I think we anticipated some of these. But do you expect to see other states follow suit with Maine and Colorado?
I do, Tony. I think that this is all a plan that was plotted out long ago. If you look at what was the single article of impeachment for the second impeachment against President Trump after he'd left office, making him the first president ever to face an attempt to impeach him and bar him from office, which was the only consequence, right, since he was already out of office, that ever has happened to an American president. That sole article of impeachment was that he had engaged in an insurrection or given aid or comfort to it, and that failed. They brought the charge. The House approved it without any hearings, but it failed in the trial in the Senate. And so that's one reason why this whole effort should be done. It's an attempt at a second, third, fourth, et cetera, bite at the apple. But this is a plan that very sophisticated people put together years ago now, 3 years ago or earlier. And we're just seeing it unfold. And we're seeing, ridiculously people like Shenna Bellows, who's not a lawyer, drop a legal opinion that was clearly carefully lawyered. And that's part of the plan, too. And I think that the Heritage folks are trying to get to the bottom through their oversight project of who actually wrote her decision. And I think the Maine legislature should try to do the same through oversight.
Jeff, isn't this kind of like, you get one of those nice sweaters and you get one of the threads that comes out and you pull it and all of a sudden you find it's unraveling? I mean, doesn't this pose that type of threat to our republic? I mean, if you've got, let's play this out with Biden. There's an impeachment inquiry. Let's play this thing out, and there's plenty there. Let's say they find something, the House impeaches him. Of course, the Senate does nothing with it. Can then Republican state officials begin to remove Biden from the ballot?
I do think, look, that at some point turnabout has to be fair play. The Democrats have unleashed all of this lawfare. They think that there are not going to be any consequences to be paid for that because they think that they're specially privileged. They think that they control the majority of the state bars. They think that they control many of the key courts that they can run to, especially the courts in D.C. So they don't think that it's going to have symmetrical impacts. And I think that Congress can push back on that, but so far it seems to me that their efforts have been anemic. I've coined this term, Tony, called journo lawfare. It's not just lawfare. It's that night after night after night on MSNBC, CNN, in the print lead media of the New York Times and the Washington Post and others, we just see a constant thread of former prosecutors who always announce that doom for Trump is coming, right? And it's very carefully allied with the lawfare efforts that folks like Jack Smith are bringing, or what's happening in Georgia, or what's happening in other states like Maine and Colorado.
So, Jeff, let's talk about how we counter that, because let's give a little summary here. There were over 50 congressional investigations into Donald Trump, 2 impeachments, as you made reference to, and guess what they came up with? Nothing. And now you've got all these, different ones that are pursuing him. What have they come up with? Nothing. What has he been convicted of? Nothing. And so it is an attempt to defeat him, not at the ballot box, but in the courts and in the media, as you said. So how do conservatives combat this?
Well, I think that we need our own set of non-governmental organizations, public interest groups, We have some, but we just don't have anything like the level of energy, the level of funding, and the number of groups that they have on the left. They're the ones that are gestating these things, like the Brookings Institute with this guy Norm Eisen, right? He's been called the master of kind of political color revolutions. He had worked on Ukraine. He's imported that into the U.S. They're the ones who are coming up with these theories. We need, actually, if we're going to do turnabout, to actually formulate those institutions. So, to the extent any are watching, we need our billionaires, those who are men of faith, women of faith, and women of and men and women of resources, to come forward, our billionaires, and fund a major effort to push back on this, so that this genie of lawfare, the Pandora's box that's been opened, can be closed again and discarded.
It's interesting. The left wants to accuse believers, Christians, evangelicals of wanting a theocracy, when they're the ones that worship government and they see it as the all in all. It's their power. And that's part of the challenge we have on the right, Jeff, is that we don't see government as the end all. We have other things to do. We have our families, we have our churches, we have our nonprofit organizations that do humanitarian good. But if we want to keep that freedom, we've got to engage in the political process, and we've got to push back on what the left is doing.
That's right, Tony. In fact, today, one of my colleagues at the Center for Renewing America sent me an article. One of the things the left really is trying to blow up is this idea of Christian nationalism. And literally in the article, there was a line that really made me laugh, that these Christian nationalists are forming a worldwide conspiracy to foist Christianity upon us, right? And I laughed, because what are we dealing with the UN? What are we dealing with the World Economic Forum and these other globalist entities? They're the ones who've engaged in an actual conspiracy, right? I think all that Americans want to do is to be left alone to worship and direct their lives as they see fit.
And that is what is at stake. And that's why we have to be informed and we have to be engaged. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate all the work that you guys do.
Absolutely. Thank you. And good luck with all of your things, Tony, as well.